Warning, we are not your attorneys. Please, don't take anything we say as legal advice. I'm Geoff.
I'm Mike.
And I'm Derrick.
And you are listening to the Not So Grand Jury,
which is still sponsored by More Law PLLC. Hey everyone, Derrick here. Before we jump into the episode, wanted to give you a little bit of a heads up that you may be a little confused. The original plan was for us in this one podcast episode to talk about 3 different Scrubs episodes, and we went a little long, almost upwards of 2 hours. Rather than have you listen to a full 2 hours of Scrubs, we decided to break it up into 2 parts. So we may mention 3 episodes, but in this part, we will be talking about 1 episode in full and then a part of a second episode. And then in 2 weeks, we will be picking up the rest of it. So hopefully that clarifies any confusion you have. And now enjoy. All right, boys. We are back with another set of Scrubs episodes for the listener, even though in real time, or I'd say in real time, in running time, we only 2 weeks ago released a Scrubs episode. In terms of our recording, we were about 4 months off of recording a second episode. So hopefully we don't repeat too much or confuse what we had discussed only a couple weeks ago. I think all 3 of us listened to it at least somewhat back. So hopefully we're not going to make this completely useless.
Fingers crossed.
Always welcome to our podcast. Just fingers crossed. We're going to talk about 3 different episodes today. We're going to take them 1 episode at a time, but generally they were curated by yours truly, Derrick, and they revolve around, each of the each has Ted Buckland, licensed attorney, we think.
We can say that much.
We know he was at least licensed in Alaska. Each one of them involves Ted, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to do the episodes. R.I.P. to Sam Lloyd, who played Ted. He passed away back in 2020. I will tell you, if nothing else, great character. Not saying good lawyer, but great character.
Oh, sure.
So let me first jump into the plot summary of the first episode, which is season 5, episode 8, My Big Bird. The episode is structured around a hospital morbidity and mortality conference, also known as an M&M conference, which was convened to review the unexpected death of one of the hospital's patients. The conference is presented as a review to figure out who's at fault. Dr. Kelso, the chief of medicine, Dr. Cox, the attending physician, and our hero, Ted Buckland, the hospital attorney, are, well, 2 of the 3 are asking questions of JD, Turk, Elliot, and Carla. Ted seems to just be there for comedic effect. As questions are posed during the conference, the episode uses those inquiries as basis for flashback that reconstruct the patient's clinical course and talk about basically a series of events as to what happened, what assumptions were made, what was escalated, did they do the job, blah, blah, blah. As for the actual flashbacks, there are some pretty ridiculous things. JD was mad that a different patient, Mr. Sutton, played by Jason Bateman, didn't thank him for his work, so he basically spends much of the flashback with Turk trying to get a thank you from his patient at his house, who happens to have his house guarded by pet ostriches, because why wouldn't that be the case? Elliot makes out with a married patient, and his wife ends up tying her to the wall with duct tape, and Carla spends the entire episode trying to buy lottery tickets for the nursing staff because the lottery jackpot was up to $100 million. And in the end, Kelso finds in the M&M conference that a lab tech was at fault for the patient's death, a Mr. Flannery, as I recall.
Is that the first time we've seen him? Does he pop up anywhere else, or is this just one little name drop to kill him off?
Want some fun things here?
Yep.
Dr. Flannery only appears once. And fun fact, he's played by the showrunner, Bill Lawrence.
That's funny. That is very funny. I didn't catch that one.
I did not
that's
either.
Why he looked familiar. Okay.
Yes. Now, I will say they did a pretty good job of making him up with the weird part in the middle and whatever, but it's definitely Bill Lawrence. I did not do this on purpose. 2 of our 3 episodes involve a Bill Lawrence appearance. and he only appears about 4 times in all of Scrubs. So apparently I picked 2 good episodes that I did not do it on purpose. So when we get to the next episode, I'll talk about his appearance in that one too, which is actually funnier than the Flannery appearance. But no, he does not reappear ever again. He is just there for literally that one moment.
That's very funny.
Okay, so let's jump in. I am happy to tackle sort of the main issue of this episode, which is the M&M conference, unless you guys have any sort of initial comments or quips about the episode.
No,
Go right ahead. Cool. To do a little backstory, for those of you who are Scrubs fanatics, M&M conferences actually come up 3 times in Scrubs, twice before this episode. The first is in season 1, episode 18, My Tuscaloosa Heart, where in that episode, the M&M conference is basically just JD at a conference room with a bunch of doctors. There's no questions. There's nothing. They just basically say, you didn't do anything wrong. And then they don't ask him any questions. And actually, he tries to ask them a question, and they just ignore him and walk out of the room. That is the first M&M conference we are introduced to. In the second season, episode 7, My First Step, Elliot makes a very aggressive surgical call on the patient, and that's where JD has the wait-and-see approach mentality of don't do anything aggressive and wait to see if the patient gets better. In this one, there's a lecture hall classroom-style setup where Dr. Kelso is basically at the front of the room, and he presents everything himself, and in the end, he congratulates Elliot on a tough call that gave the patient a chance to survive, even though the patient didn't end up surviving. And then, of course, the third is in this current episode, which is essentially the A-plot of the entire episode. I will say I am not a doctor, nor am I a med-mal attorney. I have, however, attended one M&M conference. It was not in a legal capacity, and I'm pretty sure I'm still subject to an NDA on it, so I can't talk about the specifics. Yes, Jeffrey.
Sorry. It's such a dumb joke. I've never been to an M&M conference. I have been to the M&M store.
Yeah, that's a dumb joke.
Yeah.
Here's what's sad. The second you said it was going to be a dumb joke, I knew it was going to involve M&Ms. And
Of course it was. Of course it was.
See, this is where I need a buzzer to be like,
Yeah.
Like you need to buzz yourself, Jeff.
It's so dumb.
It's so dumb, it's brilliant.
No! It's just dumb.
Nothing's better than Jeff.
Thank you. Thank you for
Making
self-buzzing
fun of
yourself.
himself.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Jeff. And we will certainly edit that so it seems like you did it to yourself without us prodding you, I hope.
Sure. Why not?
Anyway, fun fact, never been to an M&M store. Never walked in.
Yeah. A lot of M&Ms.
Wow. That's shocking.
Surprising.
Funny enough, in an M&M
guess?
conference, not a lot of dead people in there. It's more just conversations. And
I thought you were going to say not a lot of M&Ms.
I can't recall if
Unless it's like that episode from Seinfeld with the junior mint.
we're going to have to drop that in.
Over the balcony, bounced off some respirator thing into the patient.
What do you mean, into the patient?
Into the patient, literally.
Into the hole?
Yes. The hole.
Didn't they notice it?
No,
How could they not notice it?
because it's a little mint. It's a junior mint.
What did they do?
They sealed him up with the mint inside.
They left the junior mint in him?
Yes.
Well, I guess it can't hurt him. People eat pounds of those things.
Yes, they eat them. They don't put them next to vital organs in their abdominal cavity.
All right. Good times. So anyway, back to M&M conferences and not stores. So at least with regards to the M&M conference I went to in my own research, and I did in fact talk to a med-mal attorney earlier today to make sure what I was about to say is not stupid. And I will quote the response of a former colleague of mine who said, yeah, you can do that. So I'm taking that as I'm not too far off, but probably still not perfect. Good enough for our podcast. In
Fair
a
enough.
general M&M conference, it is typically a sort of structured professional meeting where clinicians like review and analyze cases that involved either complications, which they refer to as morbidities, or patient deaths, were referred to as mortalities. In the typical format, the sort of cases presented in not terribly dissimilar from what happens in Scrubs. It's presented in detail. They talk about the history of the patient, diagnoses, treatment decisions, and the ultimate outcome. And usually in attendance are physicians, residents, nurses, maybe administrators, and they discuss whether the diagnosis was timely, whether it was accurate, did the treatment decisions follow accepted standards of care? Were there systemic failures such as staffing, protocols, bad handoffs, bad resources, and come to conclusions on what could change, whether it's practice changes, protocols, educational points, things like that. The sort of one big difference between what happened in Scrubs versus what happened in at least what my experience is, that you're not there to try to figure out who's at fault. It is a learning experience. It is typically a learning experience for residents.
If it isn't the four horsewomen of the apocalypse, there's a morbidity and mortality conference tomorrow morning to figure out who's responsible for Mr. Foster's death, and here's the exciting news. I'm pretty sure it was one of you.
You really gotta change that cell phone ring.
Come on, not now.
That's not how an M&M conference would be introduced to the four residents, 3 residents and a nurse, because Carla's just part of the pack. I am yeah, go for it.
So is an M&M conference then held anytime a patient dies, or is it? I assumed it must not be, because that would be incredibly burdensome.
Correct. So my understanding, and I did a little research on this, and it's not necessarily clear if every hospital follows this protocol, but I will also say there are sometimes state laws that require things.
Okay, sure.
Every state's a little different. Every hospital is a little different. But basically, there is a committee set up who determines what cases to bring to these M&M conferences. And so it's not just the stand, like not every death has it. And certainly they don't discuss, I don't even think a majority. I think it really is down to complicated situations or scenarios where there was like seemingly some type of systemic failure that they needed to fix.
Okay, so the patient isn't coming in with a 75% chance of dying from whatever the condition they have is, or something like that.
That's what I can tell. And I will say there is a sort of interesting thing here, and I did spend a significant amount of research on this only to come to the conclusion that there is no, my research yielded a much broader spectrum of possibilities, so I don't really have much to offer. I wanted to look up to see how much M&M conferences play in terms of discovery of med-mal cases. And I think the answer is every jurisdiction's a little different. I saw there was a case in 2021 in New York where there was I think it was a motor vehicle death. The plaintiff sued everyone and their mother and went to the hospital and said, I want all of your notes from treatments or whatever. They provided a heavily redacted version of the M&M conference.
That was going to be my next question. Is it privileged?
And again, I think the answer is it depends upon state by state, and it depends upon the kind of conference. So in New York, my understanding is that it's privileged unless the specific treating physician is in the M&M conference and provides their notes or their details or whatever. Okay. In that case, there were no specific names listed. It was just the committee discusses, and then it had a bunch of notes on the discussion. It didn't actually say who said them. And in that case, the court actually said the whole thing can come in because they weren't able to clearly say who was the person that said it and who didn't say it, which honestly apparently was a huge thing in the med-mal community in New York, because then it was wait a second, sometimes we don't know who said it, or we don't have great meeting minutes or whatever. The short version is I do think in some states it is certainly privileged, in others it's partially privileged. It is certainly state by state, hospital by hospital, from what I can tell. And obviously I'd love to give a better answer than that, then it depends, but it depends.
Sure. Sometimes that's the only answer. Yeah, unless you are doing the law review article where you have the 50 state survey, and
and maybe one was done. I just haven't seen it.
I'm sure, honestly, there probably is one out there. If there's not, and there's any law students listening, this would be a great thing to write about. You would graduate with and be an expert already in a major piece of litigation,
and then come on and you can tell us what you learned.
Yeah.
I will also say, and I think this is the important distinction between what happened in Scrubs and what happens in real life is really M&M conferences are supposed to be safe venues to identify areas of improvement in professionalism, ethical integrity, transparency in assessing and improving patient care. That is actually a quote from one website regarding like how they handle M&M conferences. That is clearly not what happens in Scrubs. It is more of a finger pointing, who's at fault conference, and that's not really the point of the conference. So yeah, that's which, by the way, I'm not terribly shocked by, but I also was curious if like an M&M conference is more about fault versus education versus whatever. They do keep saying that Sacred Heart is a teaching hospital. I'm still not sure what that means because it doesn't appear to be affiliated with like an actual university or anything, which to me indicates any hospital can be a teaching hospital, but I don't really know.
Yeah. I will say I do have Dr. Kelso's summary at the end.
Please. Please fire it.
I guess in the end, whether you're a doctor or a garbage man...
Dorian! What are you doing?
Sorry, sir. Sometimes I like to just sum things up.
Allow me to do that for you. In the end, when Mr. Foster started coughing up blood, the on-call surgeon was stuck in traffic. The nursing staff was busy losing the lottery. His original doctor was thanking a garbage man. And the covering physician was incapacitated. And what was Mr. Foster doing? He was dying in the hands of the interns. How did I do, Dr. Dorian?
Sorry I'm late. I got the keys to my Miata stuck in the cadaver.
Cut to the chase there, pea-pants.
Mr. Foster's death was the result of a pulmonary embolism, probably caused by the 21-hour flight he was on from India. Dr. Flannery, the radiologist, should have caught it on the scan.
Working from an inaccurate report, there was nothing any of you could have done to prevent Mr. Foster from passing. Which, I guess, leads us to you, Dr. Flannery.
He identifies a bunch of problems, but doesn't talk at all about, that wasn't the problem here, so we won't address any of those.
Right.
We'll just deal with Dr. Flannery off screen.
So there's a bunch of things happening there. If we take what Doug, I should have known that. Doug,
P-pants.
Yes, somebody who we talked about a lot last time. If we take Doug at what he says, that sounds like malpractice on Flannery's part. Now it's like one fragment of a sentence, but saying he should have caught it. And now is that the standard of care that like the radiologist should have caught the embolism? And if he had, would anything have been different? We don't have enough information, and none of us are doctors here.
Sure. I think we can say that Doug probably isn't an expert that would be able to testify to the standard of care for radiologists.
The whole character arc for Doug was that he was incompetent at being a doctor for living people, but is a wonderful coroner, apparently.
But he still identified what was wrong with him, even if he left his keys in there.
Yeah.
But I think Jeff's point is very important, which is he just listed off 4 issues that could have easily been corrected. What were you doing at hospital hours, not on site? Why were you focused on a lottery when you could have been actually doing your job? Also,
you were breaking into the apartment of a former patient because he didn't thank you? Am I getting that right?
Listen, they're all fired in any other scenario, but it is what it is. The one thing that's interesting about Scrubs, and I do remember watching this on, and I think it may have been Dr. Mike, who's a YouTuber who reviews, among other things, reviews TV shows for medical accuracies. And he says the one thing that Scrubs gets wrong a lot is like they always talk about how when you call a code, it's the closest doctor starts running. That's not really how it works in real life. There are code teams that are there to deal with code situations. When he says they're dying in the hands of the interns, there would probably be a code team on site who would actually be responsible. It wouldn't be basically 4 non-doctors trying to bring a patient back to life. But anyway, and again, that would have been discussed in the M&M conference to be like, why was 4 interns freaking there trying to keep the patient alive when we have a code team? It's funny, that summary that Kelso gave is like the perfect start to the M&M conference. And then they would be like, Now let's talk about each of those issues and why we cannot have this happen ever again.
Now, all right, now let's take a step back, and you're the family suing the hospital for malpractice. The fact that you can point to all of these other issues probably helps a lot in your lawsuit, even if it's not the original cause. You say, there is a systematic problem here. 4 people screwed up. I get 5 people screwed up. And my partner is dead because of it. The estate is suing for whatever. Yeah.
And you got Ted Buckland at the helm on the hospital side. So you've got some really good legal counsel helping them out. Yeah. They'd be fucked. Let's just say the short version. They'd be fucked.
I was going to say, assuming all that came out and wasn't somehow privileged in the M&M conference, but I assume that a good chunk of it would have come out. You probably would depose Dorian and say, so where were you at the time of the death? It's like, on an ostrich farm?
I was either on an ostrich farm or I was sitting waiting for my garbage man. I'm going to need 5 more days to depose this witness. Okay, moving on.
Yeah.
It's interesting, Derrick, that this is one of the episodes you picked for Ted, and I have not pulled any interesting quotes of Ted.
So it's an episode of Ted only in the sense that he was present for the entire time, but doesn't really do anything. I will actually note, and I picked it in the sense of what would a lawyer be doing in an M&M conference. And what I'm realizing is that very rarely are lawyers in M&M conferences. Because it's mostly
everyone.
about like
Derrick
the
here with a
treatment
brief
side of
message.
things.
The Not So Grand Jury is sponsored by my law firm, Moral Law PLLC. One of Moral Law PLLC's many practice areas is business law. If you are a business owner or someone who's thinking of starting up a new or side business, you need a legal team who can efficiently provide you legal counsel, keeping you and your business away from potential legal issues, and if necessary, representing you in any disputes that do arise. We pride ourselves on being cost efficient while also getting to know our clients. If you want less stress and more support, you need more law. If you would like to set up a free consult, please click on the link in the show notes. Visit our website, www.moreattty.com.
The hospital's trying to figure out what happened so it can make it better the next time. Even if they end up getting sued this time,
or email us at
you can name every doctor on the planet there. As long as they have privileges at that hospital,
now, back to the show.
Ultimately it's on the hospital to make good on that ultimate payment, right? Or whatever comes out of it. And yeah, I guess technically, like, there could be a scenario if the doctor did something unethical that they could have their license taken away or suspended or whatever. But to my knowledge, that's not really how the M&M conferences work. All right. Want to talk about ostriches?
Sure. Oh, I did pull one quote of Ted.
Hey, Carla, did you hear the lottery's up to $100 million? If I win that baby, it's separate beds for me and my mom.
Yeah, and you can spend the other $99,999,000 on therapy.
There we go. One quote of Ted.
It is funny that the lottery has inflated so much that now it's like a big deal when it's $1 billion.
Yeah.
I know they also changed the odds and everything, but different times.
Yeah. Still don't think I've ever bought a lottery ticket. I've weirdly been gifted 5 lottery tickets. Because
anytime my office is bought in, I throw money in, but yeah.
I was about to launch into an X story, Derrick, but I will refrain.
Oh, that's very sweet of you. I find myself buying them if I know they're above $1 billion. At that point, I'm like, screw it. Let's throw something out there. But
I understand the urge. At the same time, your odds of winning are about the same whether or not you buy the ticket.
Hey, can't win if you don't bet.
No, you can find a ticket. You can find the winning tickets about the similar odds.
Okay. But I don't typically, I haven't found a ticket to my knowledge. So
all right, fair enough.
Probably would buy them. All right, Geoff.
Yeah, so
can ostriches be pets?
Yeah, we've mentioned ostriches a couple times, and the short answer is no. Yeah, we've mentioned them breaking into the apartment with the guy who has the ostriches.
Oh, that, yeah.
And we get some remarks from Turk.
Dude, don't sweat it. It says here that the ostrich is generally a docile creature.
Oh, thank God.
It also says their kick can kill a man.
What? I'm coming back up! Turk!
This is, I was about to say Luke Wilson. Oh, I'm always blanking on his name.
Jason Bateman.
Jason Bateman, thank you. I'm like Arrested Development, Ozarks. But
so funny thing is Zach Braff has also appeared on Arrested Development.
Oh, okay. Derrick, were you going to say something?
I was going to say Luke Wilson?
That was the name that popped into my head. I don't know. He is, for whatever reason, Jason Bateman's one of those guys whose name leaves my mind as soon as I stop thinking about him and never comes back. So he was a patient of JD's and apparently keeps a flock of ostriches on his property. And no, it turns out, in short, that is not allowed. There is something called the Wild Exotic Bird Conservation Act that lays out exactly what birds are allowed into the country and which ones aren't. Essentially, it says the Secretary of the Interior has to maintain a list of the birds that are allowed into the country. Ostriches are not on that list. Actually, the list mostly is comprised of a bunch of varieties of parakeets, parrots, and finches, and a few other random species scattered in. But that is 80% of the list of the foreign birds that are allowed into the United States for commercial purposes. For scientific purposes, it's a little different because there's all sorts of regulations about scientific research and things. One of you looked like you had a question.
No.
So I have a question. Ostriches exist in the U.S., so if they're already here, can you make them a pet?
That's an interesting question. No, this just concerns the importation of birds from elsewhere. Now, ostriches are indigenous to essentially Africa. So, yeah, I suppose there may be a population or a breeder that's grandfathered in or something like that. I didn't look into that. What was my next point going to be? You derailed me.
God damn it, Derrick.
Oh, yeah. So it makes it a misdemeanor to, did I just say misdemeanor? It makes it
misdemeanor.
Wow.
Misdemeanor.
It makes it a misdemeanor.
It's a felony misdemeanor.
It's not misdemeanor, it's misdemeanor.
It's so dumb. It's so dumb, it's brilliant.
No! It's just dumb.
I don't give a shit.
Okay. Anyway, I can tell you the statute specifically prohibits importation of any exotic bird that's not on the list. Interestingly, assuming that these ostriches are imported, it's pretty clear that they were imported for commercial purposes. Keeping a bird as a pet is a commercial purpose, but also he at one point says that he doesn't just keep them as pets.
Why ostriches? They're such majestic creatures, don't you think? And they're like my children. Plus, I make belts out of their necks.
So if you're making products out of them, then they are certainly imported for commercial purposes. Yeah, don't import ostriches or other birds into the country. That's not good. And they can carry a lot of dangerous diseases and things. So I just wanted to touch on that really quickly. And before we move on to the next episode that we're going to talk about today. Derrick?
First, I also want to briefly mention one. I wanted to briefly say that technically JD and Turk break into the patient's home, but in fact, they're kicked by the ostrich through the window.
They are on his property.
They enter his property despite the beware of birds sign.
Yeah.
But weren't they just trying to go up to his, I assume they were trying to just go knock on his door, not with the intent of breaking into his apartment and demanding an answer to why didn't you thank me?
I presume so. Yeah, that's probably true.
So I don't know if that's illegal or not. I also don't know if an ostrich kicking you through a window is your fault or not.
Fair.
Maybe did you antagonize the bird? Also, if you came up with a fence that said "Beware of bird," what would you do?
Can you just open the gate and walk in? But the birds can't walk out?
No, they're just very well trained until he kills them for their
raises all
leathernecks.
sorts of questions, guys. Who knows?
None of them good.
Generally, if you see a beware of dog sign on someone's gates, don't go in. Maybe shout for him or something, unless you know the dog in question.
Yeah.
Whether or not it's legal to go on the property just to knock on the door. But keep an eye out for those signs. They're there for a reason. Yeah.
Yeah. That seems fair.
And in point of fact, that is a warning. It's not as though they came out of nowhere. They entered the property fully aware that there were birds. Yeah. Birds. I don't think they knew they were ostriches.
Yeah.
I thought it was a hummingbird.
I'd be curious what bird would be coming my way if I saw beware of bird. Anyway. All right. I think we've talked, most of that episode obviously is the M&M conference. So let's jump into the next one. And hold on a second. I just realized I screwed up my place.
Maximum Derrick.
There we go, Geoff. Good use of that clip. Okay, here we go. For the next episode, Season 6, Episode 17, Their Story. This is one of the few episodes where JD passes the narrating responsibilities of himself off to Ted Buckland, our hero, Jordan, and the Todd. For those who are not familiar with Scrubs, Jordan is actually played by Bill Lawrence's wife. And that is going to come into as a kind of hilarious thing when I say that Bill Lawrence appears in this episode as well. I'll get there in 1 second. First, we'll talk about Ted as the hospital's attorney. Attorney may be used in quotes, but to my knowledge, he's an attorney. Ted gets involved in an argument between Dr. Kelso and the nurses. Carla, who's their sort of fearless leader, demands a cost of living raise on behalf of all the nurses. Kelso refuses, partially because he knows the nurses would never strike because they care about the patients. In response, the nurses initiate a slowdown where they keep treating patients fine, but go very slow on basically all the administrative tasks. Dr. Kelso tells Ted that you have to fire 3 nurses to give them no raises. Ted attempts to get the nursing staff to stop the slowdown. They're too busy, quote unquote, being slow. And in the end, Ted gives them leverage by anonymously leaving an invoice on Carla's desk that shows that Sacred Heart has been purchasing $50,000 worth of needles for the low price of $50 every month for the past 30 years. The nurses use that against Dr. Kelso. He gives them their raise, and they all stay employed. So that's Ted's kind of A-ish plot. The B plot is the Todd, who we can't believe is a surgeon, has a 16-year-old patient who is scheduled to get breast implants. Turk seems to take moral offense to this, thinking that she's being pressured by her mother. Turk complains to Dr. Green, who is the Todd's, presumably the sort of doctor in charge of the Todd, who basically says, I'm a plastic surgeon, and if the check clears, I'm good. And he basically tells Todd that if Turk carries on for much longer, he's going to try to ruin his career. After talking with JD and then having a failed argument with Turk, he eventually finds a way to let the patient tell Turk why she wants the surgery, which changes his opinion, and that ends up like that. And then Jordan, played by Bill Lawrence's wife, is having some free time on her hands because, again, she's a board member. Why wouldn't she just be hanging out in the hospital with nothing to do? Just decides to, quote-unquote, have fun with Elliot and Keith's relationship. She basically convinces Elliot to play mind games with him so she can control him after admitting she loves him. Keith gets upset. Jordan wanted to see it. Then she actually feels guilty and then eventually tells Elliot to the best way to keep her relationship is to ignore anything that she, meaning Jordan, says. I only include that last part because there is a very interesting Easter egg in this episode. As I mentioned, that Jordan is played by Bill Lawrence's wife. At one point in the episode, she says something pretty mean, and then there's like a sort of one of those screeching things, and everyone behind her sort of stops.
Sure.
And then she says, my parents were mean to me.
Have you ever heard the phrase, excuse me? Here, take the fake sugars, because I hope you get cancer. I really do. My parents were mean to me.
They were mean, apparently.
Bill Lawrence is there, playing a guy in a hoodie, and then goes, oh, her parents were mean to her. It makes sense.
Okay.
And I am confident he did that on purpose so he could say that out loud next to his wife in a kind of hilarious bit of, oh, her parents were mean to her. Now I get it. I don't know if that was a little fun tongue-in-cheek thing. I'm not even sure if she knew that he had did that because she's facing this way and he's behind her.
That could have been a different day. Probably was a different day.
It could have been anything, but it is really funny that once you see it, you're like, that's a hilarious thing that you could tell Bill was just sitting there behind the director and goes, oh no, I'm jumping in. I'm jumping in right now, and I want to say that phrase. So I thought that was a little cool Easter egg. However, for purposes of our podcast, I think really the big focus is on the nursing staff wanting a raise, striking, but not really, and then eventually getting leverage thanks to what Kelso refers to, and I don't know if you have the clip, Geoff, the delightful decimal error.
See, today was the day the hypodermic needles arrived.
Happy Needle Day, Lloyd.
And to you, sir. And thanks for sending down an extra set of hands.
I'm a lawyer.
I still don't understand why you get so excited over needles.
Thanks to a delightful decimal error made 20 years ago by the good folks at Zephyr Pharmaceuticals, each month Sacred Heart gets $50,000 worth of hypodermic needles for the low price of $50.
That's it. I can't feel my arms.
Now, Lloyd, given your past history as a dirtbag junkie, I have to ask. Did you take any of Uncle Bob's needles?
No, sir. I don't use needles anymore.
Oh, so you finally got clean.
Nope. Sign here.
This is a straw, Lloyd.
Yeah, that happened. And so I guess the first thing is, and this is honestly not a question I thought of until I re-listened to that clip. What is Sacred Heart's responsibilities knowing that they are getting $50,000 for $50? Do they have a responsibility?
I was thinking about that too. And if it was, we're talking here about a contract that apparently has been in effect for 20 years, which is impressive when you're talking about contracts with a hospital. I don't imagine that those last that long. Presumably the sale of these needles was drafted by the company that sells them and not the hospital's legal team or anything. They made this error. They have not caught this error for 20 years, which makes you wonder who Ted's counterpart at this pharmaceutical company is. But I don't see that it's on the hospital to point out that they're being wildly undercharged. But I also think if the pharmaceutical company were to come to them and say, hey, this obviously was supposed to say 50,000, because I imagine non-US countries, commas are periods in like when you're delineating thousands and millions and billions and things. And I wonder if somewhere in the contract it says 50.000.00. I don't know. Who knows? But I think if the company came to them and was like, hey, clearly we've been undercharging you, and had to go into a court to say that, it might go in the company's favor. However, mistakes of that sort are construed against the party that drafted the contract. They might lose too.
And I will know, and I do know this would be a situation, and it's hard to know what actually happened if there was because he says it's delightful decimal error on the part of the pharmaceutical company. That sounds like a unilateral mistake where they have the contract, maybe even the SOW was already agreed to, and then they just put the wrong thing into the system, and this is what happened. It's quite possible. In that case, if it's a unilateral mistake, I can tell you enough about this from my knowledge of contract law. The traditional rule, the quote-unquote buyer beware caveat emptor rule, is that unilateral mistakes did not excuse performance. That was the traditional rule back in the day. Modern rule is if there's a mistake that's pretty significant and the other party acted unfairly, which I think we can say in this situation that they're acting unfairly, given that Kelso's effectively doing a dance in order to get his needles. I think in that case, there is certainly courts that would rectify and correct the contract. I guess the question, if it's going for 30 years, they can't go all the way back to the start of the 30 years. They would only be able to go back to the SOL, so probably 6-ish years for a contract dispute is my guess.
Perhaps. And is there an argument to be made that the error has now become the practice between the parties?
Oh, I think they have a lot of arguments on Sacred Heart side. There's a lot of arguments that
if this has been
if it's going on for 30 years, I
think that, and the story makes it a little too extreme where it's impossible to believe that it's been going on for 30 years and hasn't been noticed. If it's $50,000 a month for 30 years.
Yeah, that's $15 million. Although a pharmaceutical company, for them, that may be a rounding error. Who knows?
It's enough that somebody should have caught it at some point.
And it's interesting, as someone who does business litigation for a living, I can think of the arguments on both sides. And it's actually
$18 million.
It's actually an interesting argument. Yeah, that's a lot of freaking money. And it's interesting because, one, I'm not really sure what Kelso's doing with the needles.
It's a lot of needles for...
Then selling them to other hospitals, because I could see him doing that.
Also,
interesting.
It's a long enough time period.
Yeah.
It's also a long enough time period. I think they made a mistake by having it be 30 years. If it had been 3 years or something, it might have been more believable. But it's such a long time period that it's inflation had a significant impact in 30 years.
Right.
What is now $50,000 worth of needles, was that $100,000 when he was first getting it? Or
I'll clarify, it's 20 years, but okay. That's still a fair amount of inflation, and you'd think that these would be renegotiated then. That's why you don't have perpetual contracts into the future.
I could imagine having a fixed contract of, hey, we will be your needle supplier for this price as long as you order exclusively for us and you put in an order once a month.
Just get
I can imagine those terms.
I will also say, I come across a lot of automatic renewals where every year they get automatically renewed unless you give 60 days notice.
That's true.
So that happens all the time to my clients, where occasionally I'll get a message.
$12 million. Sorry.
Yeah. So I can certainly see a scenario where if the pharmaceutical company can't figure out this in 20 years, when Ted Buckland hires Morlaw to represent them when they get sued eventually, my first argument is, you're telling me that this hospital is at fault when your pharmaceutical company couldn't figure out this issue for 20 years? This is 100% what we're going to refer to as a latches argument, which is, you should have figured this out forever ago. You can't bring it up to us now. Honestly, that's not a terrible argument.
No, I think that's a very good argument. If it's literally 30 years, then yes, it's actually a totally solid argument.
That's shoot.
Maybe a court would invalidate it going forward and say, okay, this is impossibility. They can't sustain this.
Maybe they say, whenever you found it out, there'll be a rescission. We'll take the contract's canceled as of today until the next renewal period. But I think that's not a bad argument. You should have figured that out.
Sure.
Also, if I'm on the pharmaceutical side, I'd be like, they knew what they were doing. They knew they were getting this stuff for basically nothing. Come on. They're in some ways defrauding us. But honestly, I love Sacred Heart's argument better than that one, to be honest.
Yeah, no, 30 years it's too... 20. If it were 6 months or something, or
Mike
3 years.
Really wants it to be 30 years, Geoff.
Sorry, 2 years, sorry. 20 years.
And yes, there's presumably some sort of typographical error in the contract, but then they're invoicing. The way this works is the pharmaceutical company sends an invoice once a month, and that invoice must say $50 for however many. No one looked at that invoice and said, this doesn't make sense.
Yeah. I think Kelso has someone in on it at the pharmaceutical company.
Oh, maybe. Quite possibly.
That would change things. That would be the best. It turns out Kelso, who's famously crooked, was crooked. His brother's on the accounting.
It would make so much more sense if Kelso has a guy on the inside, and then when he resells him to another hospital, he gives that guy a kickback. See, now it's all making sense.
Yeah. And suddenly the latches argument wouldn't work.
Now all of a sudden we have a RICO case. So
I was just trying to think, does this rise to the level of a RICO case? It doesn't have to be one of the enumerated crimes.
Yeah, so
none of us have have the RICO statute in front of us. Let's move on.
No, but Pope's headline is that it's never RICO.
I was about to say I'm currently involved in a RICO case, but that doesn't mean I know the RICO statute well enough to bring it up when it comes to this.
Recall the whole thing.
I didn't anticipate us to spend 10 minutes on that, but that was actually fun.
It was.
Let's talk more about the slowdown / strike.
Play the clip of the conversation here. So,
what's going on? Hey, maybe it's the surprise party you've been waiting for your whole life. Just play it cool, Teddy boy. The party man is here.
It's not a surprise party, Ted. It'll never be. Nurse Espinosa and her chiquita Nercitas are here because they want more dinero.
Dr. Kelso and his racism.
We're not asking for much, just the basic cost of living raise.
No chance, Pink Pants.
Sir, the last thing we need is a strike.
They'll never do it, Ted. A strike would hurt the patients. See, that's their biggest weakness. They care about the patients.
This isn't over, Dr. Kelso.
Yeah, scram.
Sir, they aren't asking for much, and the little things can make a big difference. I know I'd be a lot happier with some extra cash, or a friend, or hair.
How would your life be any different if you had hair?
Sorry. We're doing this for Ted, so I wanted to get all of Ted's
fair enough
dialogue in there.
There's also...
I thought you were going to keep going.
No,
with
I didn't include the whole
clip.
flashback.
We hear his mom die. And
I mean, him trying to decide what shampoo to use, I have those nightmares all the time. And it's very hard, guys. It's very hard to live knowing that could be what I do, is not sure what shampoo to use.
So a couple
Yeah, there's a few.
Just a couple. Just a couple.
The strike, the slowdown itself, the role of a general counsel in advising on a strike or a slowdown.
Yep.
The blatant both racism and sexism at play.
Yeah. Parts of the show have not aged as well as we'd like.
No, but here's what's interesting, and this is what I keep thinking, because partially this is what I do for a living. You are Ted. You are the GC of a hospital. That has just happened in front of you. What do you do?
About the sexism and the racism?
All of it. That
you report that to the board.
Right. And this goes back. So
that part's easy. You report that to the board, and there should be some mechanism.
So that's the interesting part. And this is the one thing that Scrubs... Oh, listen, Scrubs gets a lot of things wrong, obviously. Sure. But the one thing when involving Ted that never gets brought up in Scrubs, and I think is an important distinction in real life, is who is Ted's client?
Yes.
Ted's client is the hospital. The hospital is effectively the board of directors of the hospital. He reports to the board of directors as the chief legal officer. If the medical director of a hospital has done what Kelso has done, Ted walks out of that office and either makes a phone call or walks into another office or whoever the heck it is, and he goes, "This just happened. I have recommendations. Let's get the board together."
Yes.
And yeah,
there might be an additional issue because he's now a fact witness they might have to call an outside counsel in. He might have to call an ethics attorney just to double check everything.
And again, if he's a good GC, he's already got an employment attorney on speed dial. Right?
But and there's a major hospital, like any large regional hospital, probably has the connections to, hey, this is who we usually use for our employment law issues. I'm going to send them a memo like, hey, you're being retained for this. Here's what happened.
Yeah, and I will say, in my experience of being a general counsel for a decent-sized company, normally anytime there's an internal employee issue, I don't even get brought in on that. They have their own employment counsel that they use for almost all of them. Yeah, I get read in, but more of a for your knowledge, if you're having conversations with them, the employment attorneys typically handle that. Yeah, that's a fair point.
I realize the hospital is called Sacred Heart, but it's never really discussed whether this is a religious hospital or not. But it's presumably a nonprofit hospital. It's not state-run. It doesn't seem to be for-profit. Now, nonprofit governance has shifted somewhat in the last 20 years, but as a GC for a nonprofit, I can say every CLE I'm in that's about working on behalf of nonprofits is you need procedures for these things. Undoubtedly, a hospital the size of Sacred Heart has policies for that stuff.
Correct.
Taking one step back, pretending Kelso was not racist and sexist in the scene.
Sure.
The role of a GC, as somebody who's not a GC, anytime my clients start asking me for business advice, I usually tell them that's a business decision. In this case, should you give your employees a raise? I don't know. I'm your attorney. I don't know I'm not the one looking at your accounting. I don't know why I would be out of step if I started advising them on that. And I feel that way about Ted. A lot of Ted's behavior here, actually.
I actually have a little bit of an opposite opinion, and it's not opposite in the sense that I give business advice all the time, but when you're a GC for a company, you have to be having business conversations. And I'm not saying I'm the one giving them business advice.
Yeah,
but they go hand in hand. It's amazing how many times I write emails or on phone calls go, in the end, this is a business decision. However, and then I provide my pros and cons on the legal side / pseudo-legal side. And so Ted's point here, the avoidance of a slowdown, that's honestly a semi-legal issue, right? That's not a terrible thing to bring up. He didn't bring it up in any capacity. That would be a thing you would want to bring up to a business person to be like, just to let you know, if they end up doing, this is going to cost us a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of energy, blah, 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 blah. That's not a terrible thing to bring up.
We might take a look at what Todd's a different character, what Ted does do in response to Kelso's behavior here.
You know what? If the nurses keep going on like this, I'm going to give them their raise, but I'm going to pay for it by firing 3 of them, the ugly ones. How does that sound?
Whatever you think is right, sir.
You're an ass.
Ted, you idiot. You just said the out loud thing in your head and the in your head thing out loud. Don't make eye contact. Just keep moving.
So, not at all the right way to go about any of that.
I love that.
Something that I think is worth mentioning here is, as general counsel for the hospital, and that because he reports to the board, it is very likely that Kelso has no authority, or at least Kelso's authority to fire him is severely limited. It would probably take the board deciding to dismiss general counsel, especially if Ted was like, this is what's going on.
Generally, I agree, although Ted is supposed to be such a bad lawyer that, like, they might actually be on board pretty quickly.
Yes, that's fair. They may all jump at the opportunity to get rid of Ted, but at the same time, maybe they're not paying very much, and so they aren't going to get anybody of better caliber than Ted.
Can't imagine Ted's salary is high.
Right, he shares a bed with his mom. We just heard that. So, what Ted instead does is he learns about the discrepancy between the actual cost of the needles and what they're being charged, and he gives that information to Carla.
I've got to find a way to stop this slowdown before someone loses their job.
The stress is killing me. You're sweating because you're under the tanning bulb, genius.
If only the nurses had leverage, I could help them.
Ted, I found this extra box of needles in my truck.
Needles? There's leverage.
It seems like everyone knew about this. Like, multiple characters were aware of the needle thing before today, including Ted.
JD was aware of it. If JD's aware of it, Carla's aware of it. Let's be clear.
She's been there years longer and seems to know more of everything. Yeah. So that part's a little bit of a plot hole, maybe.
It's also, as I realize, Ted is a human being. He doesn't want to see his friends lose their jobs. But as general counsel, it is not his job to make sure anyone else keeps their job necessarily. It is to act in the best interest of the hospital.
This is malpractice, or at least like very close to like giving. If his client is the hospital and he's giving, I don't know, maybe this is not confidential information, but if we're assuming that the staff is not aware of it, then he's giving confidential information to the staff for leverage in a negotiation. That is
against the hospital, which is his client.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
that's not
fun. Fun. I get to play devil's advocate here.
Oh, okay.
What is the best interest of the hospital?
Oh, you're saying stopping the strike is the best interest of the hospital? It might be. We don't know their books. We don't know.
Fair enough.
For all I know, this hospital's losing money every month and they can't afford to get raised.
And I will say, Kelso, almost every episode, Kelso bitches about the budget. So there is that.
Yeah, how much of the factual situation that we're presented here are we actually considering in your question, Derrick? Because if it's what's in the best interest of the hospital, it is to side with the nurses, get rid of Kelso, address the contractual problem with the pharmaceutical company, potentially, and move on.
Right. Now, and it shocks me that this hasn't come up, it's not like Kelso was private about the needle issue. Like, he's actively dancing in the middle of the parking lot.
He tells the delivery driver.
Yeah.
Who we find out later is actually knows Carla, like they know each other. So like there's one of the plot holes here, one of the many plot holes here is that I am confident a nurse or a staff member is aware of the needle issue. And in that case, there is no leverage. Everyone's aware of it. Now, obviously, at any moment, someone could call up the pharmaceutical company to be like, what the hell are you doing? Yeah. So I guess there is a version of leverage here. I also think that if it's truly had been going on for 30 years, Carl would be aware of it.
20 years.
Obviously. 50 years. 100 years. Since Lincoln. Yeah. So
the movie.
Correct. It's just the movie. It was actually after Scrubs. No, listen, I generally agree with you. It's not Ted's best moment. I'm also going to tell you, it's not Ted's worst moment. No. He actually solves an issue. We can disagree with the tactics, but he solves an issue.
Yes. Assuming that it is confidential.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's either malpractice or bordering on it. If it's not confidential, then yeah, I guess he just pointed out an obvious thing to her, in which case she must feel really dumb for having Ted point something out to her.
And it's worth noting that what's in the best interest of the hospital is different than what's in the best interest of a for-profit company. So if there is an argument to be made that siding with the nurses, regardless of what form that takes, let's say just broadly speaking, siding with the nurses in this dispute means that you have happier nurses who are more efficient and just higher morale generally, and therefore provide better care to patients, which is what the hospital exists to do, that presumably that could be in the best interest of the hospital, because the hospital's interest here is not, purely speaking, its bottom line. That's important because that you need that to be able to do all the things that the hospital wants to do. But it is not a for-profit company, so the interests are a little different than what Derrick, one of your companies would. Not one of your companies, one of the companies that you represent would.
My companies, they're mine.
Right.
Hear that, clients? They're mine. And I do advise, obviously, nonprofits occasionally. I do not have any nonprofit hospitals, so I cannot attest to that. But yeah, no, it's a fair point. Let's also talk about, and it happens right after the clip you had previously played, the opening of someone else's mail.
Sure.
Dr. Reed! I have a package for you. It's addressed to your home, but since you're here...
Lloyd, I wanted that delivered to my house because it's private and it would be embarrassing for me to open it here at the hospital.
We can't. We have to. Wait. You're talking about opening someone else's mail. I think we should stop for a moment and consider the ethical implications here. All done.
I had made the point in our shared folder that all three of us have access to that opening someone else's mail is a federal felony.
Oh, yeah.
And it is a misdemeanor in California. And I'm saying that is in a situation where you are going out of your way to open someone else's mail. It's not if there was like a mistake. We all had situations where there was like an incorrect delivered letter or a shared address where it went to the wrong unit. I'm unit 1 in my building and unit 2 is above me, but it looks like 2 is 1 and whatever. Happens all the time.
I now check every piece of mail to make sure, because so often I am getting other people in the building's mail.
Correct. It happens all the time. That is not, it's not a felony if Geoff accidentally opens up a different unit's mail. However, Geoff did make the point that what happens if it's a package delivered by common carriers, which is the quote unquote
FedEx, UPS, Amazon.
So talking about that, Geoff.
Yeah, the statutes dealing with opening people's mail is very specifically dealing with the Postal Service and tampering with mailboxes and things like that and interfering with specifically mail carriers. And that is strictly defined as the packages and envelopes and all the stuff that goes through the U.S. Postal Service, or that is destined for the U.S. or came from the U.S. and is in foreign postal service. It's treated as U.S. But that does not apply to anything else. So if I put a UPS package to a client or something, it does not fall within the scope of this statute if someone steals that and opens it. It's still a crime, but not this specific crime, because mail is different than packages delivered by common carriers. And it's worth noting that when Congress wants to include mail and anything like mail, they have language that they use to do just that. There's a case, and a little bit of a content warning here because I'm not going to talk about it, but the case does involve child sexual abuse material. So before you Google it, be aware of that. That case involves a statute that prohibits the transport of certain items shipped in interstate commerce or foreign commerce by any means. And that is a direct quote from the statute. So if they wanted the mail statute to extend that far, they could, or they would be on solid ground to do that. But they have not. So in this situation, obviously we played the audio, but here we're looking at not a mail carrier. This was not a U.S. Postal Service employee or the logo. It's quite clearly a UPS knockoff for TV purposes thing. While the three of them taking charge of Dr. Elliott's package is a crime, it is not this crime. There's then the question of what crime it is, because they then deliver it to her house themselves after opening it and then put it together. It's a stripper pole, by the way, for the audience.
And Keith, Elliot's boyfriend, who apparently lives there, invites them in and lets them install it. At some point, I'm not sure, this might be just not a real, there's no damages here.
It's the Grand Theft Auto where you just move the car 3 feet.
Sure.
This isn't something that's getting prosecuted tomorrow.
No, probably not, because it doesn't seem like Elliot's chomping at the bit to file a police report or anything over this.
Nor does Elliot understand the law.
Also, it is a sizable package. Now, I don't know why this guy, we hear his name and I've immediately forgotten it. Craig.
Lloyd.
Okay.
Craig. I want him to be named Craig now.
Okay.
I have no idea.
Lloyd, Craig, whatever. Why he would deliver this huge package that's destined for her house to her place of work, where now it's her responsibility to transport it, is just insane. Thanks. Now you're making me do your job. I paid you to do this.
By the way, unless Elliot lives next door to the hospital, there's no carrier would be delivering it, would have it in his truck.
That's a massive coincidence if she's on his route and the hospital, because probably everything in that truck is destined for that hospital.
Right.
Except for her stripper pole.
He just gave them $50,000 worth of needles that looks like there's 100 boxes.
It's true.
Short version, probably a crime, not getting prosecuted. Thank you for listening, everyone. Part 2 is going to come out in 2 weeks, where we will pick up from where we left off and talk about the rest of Season 6, Episode 17, Their Story, where we will talk about employment discrimination, including Kelso's meeting with the nurses, as well as Todd, the issue involving Todd's patient. And we're also going to talk about Ted picking up the tea that was too hot, getting into some interesting conversations there. And then we will jump into the last episode, Season 8, Episode 8, My Lawyers in Love. And then we will give our grades and finish it up. Thank you all for listening. The Not So Grand Jury is sponsored by Morwapee LLC.
The opinions expressed in the Not So Grand Jury are those of the hosts themselves and not of their respective employers.
The theme music for the Not So Grand Jury is from Gustav Holst's Jupiter and is in the public domain.
If you'd like to get in touch with us, if you want to suggest future movies, or even if you want to offer corrections, you can email us at notsograndjury@gmail.com or message us on any of our social media accounts.
The Not So Grand Jury is copyright 2026, all rights reserved.